Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited for today's conversation. I'm joined by William Harris, founder of Elumynt. What stood out to me in getting ready for this one is how consistently your work centers on performance, especially around helping brands navigate increasingly complex paid media ecosystems without chasing hype. Elumynt has a really clear point of view on focus, discipline, and execution, and I'm excited to unpack how that thinking came to life. William, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Torben. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Can you share a bit about your background and then take us to your current role at Elumynt?
Yeah, background. I mean, this goes back, let's just say, way back. My background is somebody who likes to figure things out and how they work and what's really going on. And so I'm going to go back to when I want to say like 5 or 6 years old. I'm in kindergarten. And one of the things that I would do in kindergarten is I would sit in the back of the bus. And there was another kid also named Will. I think he was a grade older than me. And we would take RC cars and just disassemble them and use the parts to build things with them. So it's like, even if I'd get one for my birthday or something, it's like, it would be a day before I probably had it apart for parts. And I was less interested in playing with it than I was about how it worked. And so you fast forward that to today, Elumynt and what we're trying to do and what we're looking at is basically like, how does advertising work? How does growth work? How do we do it in a way that's not just patting ourselves on the back, look, we hit this ROAS, but in a way that makes your CFO say, we need to be spending more money. And if you can get the CEO or the CFO saying that, then you've kind of cracked the code.
Awesome. And what does a typical day look like for you, William?
So typical day and CEO don't go hand in hand, right? Like I would say every day is unique and different in its own way. Yeah. So morning routine, I like to wake up, I do my workout, then I read my Bible, I say my prayers, and I do memorize a Bible verse every morning. It's just something that I do. And then there's a little song that I sing with my girls when they get up and getting them ready for school. There's a little song that I like to sing to just help them start their day off on the right foot. Because I think there's something powerful about music. So then we get into the day. First thing I'm doing is I'm checking my team's messages because that's where my team can message me. And I'd say like that is the most, I don't know, like area of messages, right? Where it's like my team has my attention the most. And so it's like, okay, so anything in here that I need to jump into. And then I'm jumping into my email, I'm jumping into Slack messages, I'm looking at everywhere else. What are the things that I need to look at? And I'm using that to basically prioritize my day. Okay, are there any things that I need to add in here? I already have usually an agenda for what my day is going to look like. I've got my calendar figured out. Like there's a lot of things, but then you got to look and say, okay, out of the 100 other things that's vying for my attention today, what are the 3 or 4 things that I'm saying, these are absolute priority, I need to take care of these. These 10 I can delegate to somebody else to make sure that they get done because they still have to get done today. And then maybe these are the things that I could be an agenda item for tomorrow or next week or whatever that might be. But I use that first part of the day to basically organize and prioritize because it's too easy to get sucked into all of the different things and the different rabbit trails quickly. And I think you just lose a lot of focus and productivity that way. Then we get into meetings and then more meetings. And then occasionally, ideally, recording a podcast. I've actually got a couple this week. So I'm recording this one with you. I run my own podcast. And so I'm typically recording 1 to 2 of those a week. And probably my favorite time of the day is just getting on podcasts.
Cool. Awesome. And we're excited to have you here as well. You mentioned your team. Tell us a little bit about that. Like what's the size and do you have everything in-house? Do you outsource? How does that work?
It's a good question. We have, I want to say we're officially at 20 W2 employees now. So we've been growing, which is a lot of fun. And then we do use contractors as well. I think contractors are just a great way to bring in fresh perspective as flex, right? And so as you're maybe getting to the point where you don't quite have enough to hire to justify hiring another person in that role, you need a little extra support, then you're using a contractor or some way in that case. And there's several contractors that we've used for, ongoing years after years after years. And they prefer to be contractors, not employees. And several of them I've asked if they want to do employees. They like the contract lifestyle, but mostly in-house, and for a couple of reasons. The main reason for that is, and I didn't start off that way. I started off, it was just me in a coffee shop and some contractors. And like, that was, the way that we started things. But I realized that then I would spend all this time making sure I trained somebody to think and approach advertising the way that we were doing it. And they could maybe, if they're a contractor, they could take on 1 or 2 of the accounts. And you're like, oh man, then I'm spending my time training and trying to help somebody else be at the same speed or pace that we get. And I realized it's like, well, what's interesting is if I can train an employee this way, then they can take on 5 or 6 accounts. And so then I'm having to spend less of my time training, more of my time being able to focus on just actually growth. And so did focus on in-house for the most part now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, excellent, excellent. What type of? I mean, you're mainly in the DTC client space, right? So tell us a little about the like, what kind of clients do you have?
Yeah, I got to be careful, make sure that I'm not saying anything that I'm not allowed to say. We've got clients ranging across all kinds of different verticals within D2C. So D2C, direct to consumer, right? Like e-commerce, that's the primarily where we're focused. We've got golf clients, apparel clients, we've got health and beauty clients, we've got exercise, workout equipment clients. It ranges. And part of that is because, let's say, for instance, that you have a golf ball client. We have one that's a golf ball client. It's called Snell Golf Ball. We've been with them for, I don't know, almost a decade now, right? It's going to be very difficult to work with another golf ball brand because our market for them is national. And so then we'd be competing against ourselves. Sometimes that does come up, and we usually just talk to both our current client and whoever that lead is and just say, hey, this would be a direct competition with somebody else we're working with. If you're okay with that, we can either set it up on the same team. Sometimes there are competitors who say, I want the same team working on this. That's fine. You guys know the space, and it's maybe not as direct of competitors, maybe like a beauty client and a beauty client, and it's like they have some overlap. Other times they'll say, yes, but I want siloed teams, right? Make sure that it's not the same team. But I think the fun part about being in the D2C space that I'm excited about, that I think our team gets excited about, is you get to work with a lot of really fun, interesting, upcoming brands that are maybe becoming household names to our generation and younger. Like we're really focused on a lot of these things, but they maybe haven't peaked to the point where they're household name everybody else. And so you sometimes feel like you're on the cutting edge of what's cool.
Hmm. Awesome. And obviously it's paid ads, and like tell us a little bit more about what services you offer to these companies.
Yeah, our bread and butter is going to be paid ads management. So we're looking at saying, how do we optimize the money that you're spending on digital ads specifically? So we don't do billboards or out of home or anything like that. But it is digital, and digital including programmatic and including, CTV and things like that as well. But we're not doing like traditional media buys or things like that. The other part of this, though, is what goes hand in hand with that is we feel like you can't do an effective job media buying without also doing the creative. And so the creative is a big part of what we do, making sure that we're looking at what actually gets somebody to stop scrolling. What gets them now, once they've stopped scrolling, to say, I gotta know more, I gotta click on this, do this. And then how do we do that in a way that you're acquiring the customers that are going to drive lifetime value, not just this quick impulse buy, right? And so sometimes you see people maybe optimize for that quick win, and they're sacrificing the lifetime value of that customer. And we see this in cohort studies. One time that I can think of this showing up in a situation where there was one cohort that, and I don't remember the exact numbers, maybe they cost $25 to acquire that customer, and another cohort that was maybe $40 to acquire that customer. But when you looked at the lifetime value, that $40 acquisition was significantly bigger over the next 12 months. But if you just feed that to the algorithm is going to say, great, I'm getting all of these clients at $25. I'll pat yourself on the back. This is fine. But again, that's doing it in a way that you're not thinking about the actual health of that business over the long period of time.
Exactly. One thing agency owners often struggle with is aligning clients around what actually drives result versus what feels exciting in a moment. What's been most effective for you in helping clients internalize how Elumynt thinks about
Yeah.
performance and prioritize? Priority.
Education, and there's several forms of it. One is the podcast that we do, making sure that people are hearing, how do we talk about growth ahead of time? Blog articles that we're writing about, this is how we think about growth, right? Before they even have any interaction with us, that's what they see. The next piece then is when we do their audit, before we would work with somebody, we always require an audit, so that way we can get access, and we're going to show them, this is what we would do if we were to take over your accounts. And we will almost always say some things that are going to sound controversial to them. That's not good from a sales standpoint, but the reason why it's good is sometimes it weeds out people then who would say, look, they've got money in hand, they're ready to pay you, but they want it done a way that we don't agree with. And so we've got to be aligned before we even start working together. From there, it's going to be continuing to re-educate them, because maybe you're teaching them some things that are, I don't know, feel foreign to them. And you need to work through how to educate not just the person who signed up with you, but the rest of their team too. And so maybe the growth marketer is like, yep, I'm all in. And their CFO says, this doesn't make any sense to me at all. Okay, we got to work with them, because the CFO's got a lot of pull on whether or not you're spending that money there. Maybe we're working with their CEO. Maybe we're working with their board, right? Sometimes the CEO, we've got one client, CEO is completely on board, CFO is completely on board. But their board, they were actually started in France. So this is a US company, but they were started in France. And the French company is like, we don't know if we see it. And so we're working with them to help them educate their board on what this means and why. And so I'd say the biggest part comes down to education, repeated education, and finding ways to communicate that to the rest of their teams. That way, you're not leaving that in their hands to figure out how to decipher and communicate this. We're going to help them with that communication so they can look at the heroes.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Your clients are quite big, right? If I'm not mistaken, like they do, it's quite a big number they put down every month for you to actually do work with them, right? Can you talk about
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've got clients that are spending millions of dollars a month. We've got clients that are spending maybe $20,000 a month. So we do have a range. I'd say the ones that are on the smaller side, we call that our accelerator program. Sometimes the thing that's really fun about those brands is you can see a dramatic effect from what you're doing because that might be the biggest channel that they're operating in, right? So if you go from 20,000 a month and spend to 50,000 a month and spend, you have completely changed their business, their lifestyle. They've hired people like it's undeniable the effect that you've had. Some of our clients, we might be spending several $1,000,000 a month, and that only makes up maybe 10% of their actual sales. And like the rest of their sales, like there's just such big companies that if you take them from 2 million to 2.5 million, they're not even still like, you still have to convince them that it was done well, right? And so a
that?
lot of fun on that side as well, but there's just a difference between the two companies. We like both for different reasons, but there's a lot of fun to be had sometimes still playing in that small market too.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, a little bit about actually team and talent. Like, how do you think about building a team that can operate at such a high level consistently? Like, what's been harder than expected for you as you scale people, not just revenue?
I think one of the things somebody told me about that I really appreciate is A players are A players. And you can't necessarily turn somebody that is a C player into an A player because it's not necessarily an education thing. It's a personality thing or something along those lines. And so doing a better job hiring for that culture fit, hiring for those core values, making sure that they have that. And so we have three core values. And a big part of this then is in our interview process is not whether or not you know the stuff, but do you fit these core values? And one is be accountable. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are. If you're not accountable just by nature, it's just not going to work because you could have the best idea and it just didn't get executed. The other one is be innovative because we are competing, right? We are competing against a lot of other agencies, a lot of other brands. We have to make sure that we are doing a better job of communicating than maybe they would be. And the third one is be human because you're still talking to human beings. And at the end of the day, there are going to be days where we do not do better, right? That happens to every agency. And you have to say, okay, today wasn't a good day. How are we communicating? What are we doing to make sure that we also recognize the human being on the other side of this, initiative is maybe feeling stressed or frustrated, and you can't take that the wrong way just because they're maybe coming down and saying, hey, today sucked. What are we going to do tomorrow? And it's like, okay, yep. Human being, enter that layer. But I do think that the biggest part of this is figuring out how do you hire for those right people who have those personalities, who fit those core values, and then train them in the way that we like to think about things. And so we do think about things differently. And that's where podcast comes in and blog posts and stuff like that. Things that we've written about that we can make sure that we level them up to at least think the way that we do. And now they're applying those core values to our thought process.
Hmm. Excellent. Yeah, that's really good. All right, moving on. Let's talk about industry trends. It's always a hot topic on this podcast. So, what major shifts are you seeing in your industry right now?
Wow. D2C has just had a wild time the last few years. I feel like every year there's been something that has been very disruptive. Man, it's hard to talk about shifts and disruptions without talking AI, but I feel like it's so talked about by everybody. But we'll touch on that at least a little bit. AI is playing a big role in this. AI has the ability to get people doing more creative, more iterations, unique approaches to it. We're using AI specifically to analyze all of the different components of people's videos. And so it's not just a matter of saying, hey, this video is working or this video isn't working for an ad, but what piece of this video is working? Is it the hook? Is it the middle part? Is it the CTA? And then within there, why is it? Oh, because it's reaching this marketing mind state. That's a shout out to Will Leach, who wrote the book on marketing mind states, or this behavioral science tactic, and a shout out to Nancy Harhut and her book about behavioral science tactics and marketing. And so you're looking at these things and saying, what are the components that make those effective? And how do we use that to make more that are using those same components? And so I'd say AI is definitely leveling It's not replacing, and a lot of people still have talked about that. I think there's enough shift in people's way that they're talking about this now is that it's not necessarily, and Claudebot is getting a whole lot of attention right now, right? You can use it to replace things, but I would say the real piece when you're playing at the elite level is not how do you replace people, but how do you level people up? And I'd say that's where we're seeing AI be the most effective is you're taking somebody who can do something fantastic and now you're giving them tools to help them do something even more fantastic, which is what's going to help them compete against the others.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. And what's working well for you right now, and what are some challenges you are facing in your business?
Working well. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things, right? We're doing really well. I would say one of the things that's working really well for us is the way that we approach growth. We focus on EBITDA. We started doing that several years ago. It would have been when I was talking to my business partner, Jeff Snyder, and we both come from a SaaS background. And we were looking at the way that people were approaching media buying in our space, at least the people who were very vocal about it on X and things like that. So much focus was on ROAS. And it's in concept, it makes a lot of sense, but it was missing whether or not people were looking at overhead and things like that and contribution margin, and basically said, how do we tie what we're doing to a company's P&L? How do we actually make sure that what we're doing is driving EBITDA for them? If we can do that, it becomes almost a no-brainer to the point where there was this client that we brought on, and I want to say that they were used to paying their agency like 10,000 a month. And then our first invoice for them was like 20,000, right? It was significantly more than what they were used to paying their agency. And I remember this guy coming and saying, "Man, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for my boss. That is a lot more than we were paying our agency before you guys." I said, "But wait a minute. We were able to increase your spend by $200,000 month over month. With that spend, we were able to increase your EBITDA, your profit, by $800,000 month over month. Is your boss happy to pay $10,000 to get $800,000 in extra profit?" And he's like, "Well, when you put it that way, yeah, I guess he is." And so, like, that's exactly how we want to put it. And I would say those are the things that are working very well is just thinking through how we look at an approach and measure what's working. What's not working well? It's a good question. I would say this is hard to say that it's not working well, but it's just figuring things out. My mind likes to work very much in an analytical way. I'm developing a better EQ. And so if you know the difference between IQ, EQ, things like that, I would say that the idea, and I talk about hiring for those core values, um, it makes sense in concept. I would say that we have gotten better at it. I would say we could continue to get better at it more and more. It is very difficult still, even working with recruiters or whatever, to find people that you look at and you go, wow, this person gets it. I've got to have them. We have those people on our team, but I would say that it always takes a little bit longer to hire than I would like to right now. And so there are times where our team can feel a little bit stretched because it's like, hey, you've got an extra account or two while we're looking to hire, and that's tough. And I say, part of that gets easier as you grow because you have more people to shift that onto instead of each person having two accounts over, they only have one extra account, right? Because now you've got enough to work on hiring. You're able to, let's just say develop better recruiting and things like that. And so I'd say recruiting is probably the thing that would not as fast as I'd like to be on.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tricky one. Just touching a little bit back on AI that you mentioned, is like where do you see AI going, and what challenges do you see agencies face in adopting it?
AI is wild. I think that it's inevitable. I think that it is definitely, like I said, it's leveling things up. Where I see it going is it will be the thing that it will get to a point where it automates more work, but again, still being guardrailed rather by a human being. And so maybe instead of a human being taking on 5, 7, 10 accounts, that human being has 50 accounts that they're managing. And the AI has been optimized, tweaked, and trained in their way of thinking so where it's just flagging if there's something that is amiss. And it's like, great, here's where human intervention is needed. Here's where human intervention is needed. So you're digging into those spaces. And then it's, they're prompt engineering and modifying and making sure that that AI is doing a better job with the nuances of that specific business, right? Because it can't just be blanket applied. And so there's just like, they're just morphing and tweaking it so that way way it works more appropriately. I think that's where it's going to go. What would be holding agencies back from adopting it? I don't know if there are agencies that aren't adopting it. I would say that they're trying to. I would say the thing, and there may be, but I don't know that I don't know of any agencies I'd say are some of the best at going ahead and using it. I would say the thing that is holding them back, though, would be leadership. If leadership is not all in on AI, then I think that it doesn't give the employees as much permission to play with it as they should, and then they'll just get left behind. They will just miss the boat. So not that they're not willing to adopt it, they're just not maybe giving it permission to be adopted as much.
Mm, exactly. And can you share a bit how you enable AI in your agency?
Yeah. So we've built a bunch of AI tools, my business partner, Jeff, and I'd say Jeff is the one who's mainly building them. I give my thoughts and ideas, but he's the technical one who knows how to figure out turning them into what we want them to. But we do give this to each one of our team members. And so there's a bunch of people on our team who have built scripts and AI tools for managing things on Google, on Meta, on TikTok. So we're making sure verbally that we tell people you have the ability. We are paying for the AI tools where they need to. So it's like, what AI tool do you need? Let's get it on here. We are giving them resources to do this. Hey, do you need access to this course? Do you need this? We're continuing to do case studies as a team where we're asking people and saying, okay, what's a way this week that you used AI that you think could actually be exciting for the rest of your team? Or maybe there's no other practical application outside of what you're doing with it, but you saying it might inspire somebody to come up with something similar in their area as well. And so I'd say there's just a lot of good conversations around this, and then giving access to the tools where it's needed.
Hmm. Excellent. Yeah. All right. Looking into the crystal ball, where do you want to be? Go 6 or 12 months from now. You choose. Whether you want to go 6 or 12. Where do you see yourself? You're in your agency.
6 months is just not very much time. When I'm thinking, where do I want 100 years from now? And then I backtrack and I say, okay, where do I want to be in 10 years? Where do I want to be in 1 year? So I'll go with the 1 year. That's the longest time frame you gave me. Where do I want to be in 1 year? I've said this to our team. This is our focus. This is our goal. We want to be the recognized leader in e-commerce growth. I don't think that I can make that happen within 1 year. I think so if we're being real, I'd say my goal is to be there within 5 years. I don't want you to be able to have a conversation about growing an e-commerce store and Elumynt doesn't show up there. Obviously, Shopify is going to show up there. There's going to be other brands that do, but then I also want to make sure that Elumynt is mentioned in that same context. And you say, well, but here's what Elumynt has to say, right? Here's something that I read on Elumynt. Oh, here's something I saw on Elumynt's podcast. I want to be in those conversations. And you say, they're clearly leaders within e-commerce growth. We are doing the work. We are growing brands that I can't even talk about typically publicly, but we are growing some very big, reputable brands that are billion-dollar brands, right? Like some very, very big publicly traded companies. But I want to move from just doing the work a little bit more quietly behind the scenes to making sure that we are recognized leaders in the space.
Excellent. That's great. And if you could solve one major challenge today in reaching that, what would
solve a major challenge in reaching that? I think the thing that I would like to have happen is I would like to have somebody as a guest on my podcast that is not necessarily e-commerce, but is just a massive name that gets enough attention to it. Like Shaquille O'Neal, right? Something like that, where you're like, he is in business. He's got a bunch of franchises. He does a lot of things. It's relevant enough topic, but because it's Shaquille O'Neal, it's just such a name that you're just like, okay, maybe that gets a little bit more attention than me interviewing. What's funny, I interviewed, for instance, the CEO of PacSun. I mean, fantastic company. They're crushing it. Like, she is at the top of her game. But if I asked you what her name was, I guarantee you have no clue what her name was, and most people don't. And so she is amazing and brilliant, and the content is so fantastic. But if I say, we just did a podcast with Brianne Olsen, I can tell most people that, and they go, I don't know who that is. Should I be excited about this? And you're like, yes, she's the CEO of PacSun, and she's killing it, right? Like, she was doing stuff in the metaverse before most other brands were even considering it. Like she's crushing it. She's very forward thinking. But so I think somebody though that is almost like a marquee name, that's something that I would like to have happen this year.
Awesome. Yeah, man, it's gonna happen. I can feel it. So yeah, just keep the good podcast. William, thank you so much for sharing your insights. This was incredibly valuable. I really appreciate your time and openness.
Yeah, Torben, I appreciate your questions.
I appreciate it, man. And to our audience, thank you. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time. Have a good one.